Himalayan jumping spider. At 22,000 feet on Mount Everest, the air holds about 40% of the oxygen you'd get at sea level. Climbers need bottled oxygen just to function. This spider just lives there. Euophrus omnisuperstis, the highest permanent resident on Earth, sits at 6,700 meters in rocky debris surrounded by snow and ice, about a full kilometer and a half above the summit of Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Western Europe. No plants grow up there. No insects breed at that altitude. So what's it eating? The answer is wind. Tiny springtails and flies get blown upward by thermal currents from lower elevations, a process called aeolian transport, an entire food chain built on atmospheric accidents. Its Latin name means standing above everything, which is the most dramatic name ever given to something the size of a pencil eraser. First spotted in 1924 and confirmed as a permanent resident in 1954, this 5mm spider built a life 1,200 meters above the highest plant on the planet. Evolution looked at the peak of the tallest mountain on Earth and thought, needs a spider. Its entire food supply depends on the wind accidentally blowing insects to the wrong altitude. It built a life on other species' mistakes. Alaskan wood frog. If you found this frog in an Alaskan winter, you'd call it dead. No pulse, no breathing, no brain activity. Frozen solid. 65% of the water in its body turned to ice. Not frostbite on its fingers, ice crystals forming around every organ, between every cell, while its heart goes silent for up to 7 months. Rana sylvatica, the wood frog, doesn't slow down like a hibernating bear. It stops. Zero metabolic activity. Clinically dead by every measurable standard we have. Then spring comes and it restarts. Heart first, then lungs, then movement, in the correct sequence, every time. Its liver swells to 1.5 times its normal size to stockpile glycogen, which converts to glucose and floods every cell as a cryoprotectant. Alaskan populations pump out 3 times more urea than their southern relatives, giving them a second chemical shield. Its liver basically becomes a glucose factory the size of its torso. Imagine your liver suddenly taking up half your chest cavity every October. And scientists have found a third cryoprotectant in the Alaskan population that they can't identify yet. 3 chemical shields, and we only fully understand 2 of them. Even the frog has trade secrets. Every winter, this frog dies. Every spring, it decides that was optional. Apparently, uninhabitable is less of a rule and more of a suggestion. Lesser flamingo. Lake Natron in Tanzania has a pH above 12, roughly the same as ammonia, and surface temperatures hit 60 degrees Celsius. Animals that die in it are preserved as calcified statues, frozen in whatever position they landed. 2.5 million flamingos don't just survive this lake. They chose it as the only place on Earth to raise their young. Household bleach has a pH of about 12.5. These flamingos raise their chicks in water that's essentially a warm bleach bath the size of a county. Phoeniconias minor, the lesser flamingo, evolved thick, leather-like skin on its legs that resists the alkaline water. But the caustic chemistry isn't a problem they endure, it's a strategy they exploit. No predator can cross it. The extreme pH grows spirulina cyanobacteria that the flamingos feed on, creating a closed loop. Deadly water grows the only food that feeds the only bird tough enough to stand in it. Evolution's solution to predators was to raise your children in a lake that turns other animals into statues. Despite the name lesser, these aren't a smaller version of regular flamingos. They're a separate species entirely, and they're near threatened specifically because their entire reproductive strategy depends on this single lake. If you've ever complained about the local pool's chlorine levels, consider that flamingo chicks learn to walk in liquid that would dissolve your swimsuit. The deadliest lake in East Africa is also the largest nursery. 2.5 million flamingos bet their entire species on it every year. Pompeii Worm. Touch a surface at 80 degrees Celsius and you'll get a second-degree burn in under a second. Alvinella pompeiana, the Pompeii worm, builds its home in it. Discovered near the Galapagos in the 1980s, this 13-centimeter worm lives on hydrothermal vents in the deep Pacific, with its tail in water reaching 80 degrees Celsius and its head in water at 22 degrees. That's a 60-degree temperature gradient across a body only 5 inches long. Imagine your feet in boiling water while your head sits at room temperature. Now imagine your entire body is 5 inches. Another line. Another organism that didn't read the paper. It was named after Pompeii because it lives next to volcanic vents, which is either poetic or deeply ominous, depending on how well you remember how Pompeii ended. Its survival trick is a living coat. Symbiotic bacteria form a dense fleece on its back, fed by mucus the worm secretes from tiny gills. The bacteria insulate it. Its proteins are the most thermostable of any known animal, a molecular structure built for heat at the atomic level. It wears a coat made of bacteria, not figuratively. Its survival strategy is a living fleece of microbes glued to its back with its own mucus. Its body exists in 2 different climates at the same time. It's technically its own weather system. If you've been learning something new about how life handles the impossible, the channel covers biology like this every week. Subscribing is the easiest way to support it. Thanks. Strain 121. 121 degrees Celsius is the international standard for sterilization. Autoclaves in every hospital and lab on Earth use this temperature specifically because nothing is supposed to survive it. Geogemma borosii, isolated from a black smoker hydrothermal vent on the Juan de Fuca Ridge in the Pacific, doubles its population at that exact temperature. Water boils at 100 degrees. A pressure cooker tops out around 121. This archaeon treats a pressure cooker as its ideal nursery. We named the sterilization temperature after the idea that nothing survives it. This organism named itself after the temperature it prefers. Its DNA stays intact because a special enzyme called reverse DNA gyrase maintains positive supercoiling, preventing the double helix from unraveling. And its proteins are packed with ionic bonds and hydrophobic cores that hold structure in heat that would denature anything else. Its ideal Tuesday would sterilize an operating room. We built autoclaves to kill everything at 121 degrees. We didn't ask if everything agreed. Desulforudis audaxviator. Every ecosystem on Earth depends on a web of species. Producers, consumers, decomposers. Every single one. Except this. 2.8 kilometers beneath the surface, in the Mponeng gold mine in South Africa, one of the deepest mines on Earth, a single species of bacterium lives in 60-degree water in complete darkness with 0 oxygen. No sunlight, no organic matter, no other species, just uranium. Candidatus Desulforudis audaxviator, the bold traveler, gets its energy from hydrogen, produced when uranium radiation in the surrounding rock splits water molecules, a process called radiolysis. It fixes its own carbon and nitrogen from inorganic sources. It's genuinely self-sufficient. No other organism required at any stage of its metabolism. Science drew its deepest line 2 miles underground and said nothing could live beyond it. It was wrong by about 25 million years. That's how long this bacterium has been isolated from the surface, based on the age of the groundwater it inhabits. Humans and chimpanzees diverged about 6 million years ago. This thing has been living alone, underground, powered by uranium, since before our evolutionary lineage even existed. It has no neighbors, no predators, no competition, and no light. It's basically evolution's version of a doomsday prepper who actually made it work. Uranium-powered sounds like science fiction, but the mechanism is elegant. Natural uranium emits radiation, which splits water into hydrogen and oxygen. The bacterium consumes the hydrogen for energy and uses sulfate as its electron acceptor. It's not eating uranium, it's harvesting the chemical leftovers of radioactive decay. Scientists named it after a Jules Verne character, because when you find a uranium-powered loner 2 miles underground, apparently fiction is the only adequate reference point. One species, no sunlight, no oxygen, no neighbors, powered by the decay of uranium in water that last saw the surface when mastodons walked the Earth. This is the loneliest organism alive, and it's been thriving longer than our entire genus has existed. Devil worm. Before 2011, the scientific consensus was that multicellular life couldn't exist deeper than about 2 kilometers into the Earth's crust. Then someone found a worm at 3.6. Halocephalobus mephisto, named after the demon Mephistopheles from Faust, was discovered in South African gold mines at depths of 0.9, 1.3, and 3.6 kilometers. The deepest subway systems in the world run about 100 meters underground. This worm lives at a depth 36 times deeper, in rock that hasn't been exposed to sunlight since before human civilization began. It's named after the lord of the underworld, and it's half a millimeter long. Mephistopheles would be insulted. But its significance isn't size, it's location. It doubled the known depth limit for multicellular life overnight. Down there, it reproduces asexually, feeds on subterranean bacteria, and thrives in groundwater that radiocarbon dating places at 3,000 to 12,000 years old. Evolution put a worm 3.6 kilometers underground, in ancient water, in total darkness, feeding on bacteria, reproducing alone. At some point, that stops being survival and starts being a lifestyle choice. It was named after a demon because scientists couldn't explain what a worm was doing in hell. 12 years later, they still can't fully explain it. Mariana Snailfish. At 8,336 meters, the pressure is 800 times what you feel standing at sea level. If you took every person in a packed football stadium, 80,000 people, and balanced them on a dinner plate, you'd be approaching the pressure this fish feels on every square inch of its body. All day, every day. Most deep-sea fish look armored. Heavy bones, thick skin, reinforced skulls. Pseudoliparus swirae, the Mariana snailfish, did the opposite. It went soft. Transparent skin, no scales, a gelatinous body, and bones that never fully harden. That's exactly why it works. Instead of fighting pressure, it equalized it. Its cells have modified membranes that maintain flexibility under compression, and it carries duplicated copies of key genes that preserve hearing and iron metabolism at depths that would crush most vertebrate structures. When they brought the first specimen to the surface, it basically dissolved, which is one way to make a first impression on marine biology. Deep-sea fish are often imagined as monstrous, all anglerfish and fangtooth. The deepest fish in the ocean looks like a translucent tadpole. It lives under the weight of the entire ocean and looks like it's made of gelatin. Apparently, the abyss doesn't require armor, just good engineering. 8,000 meters down, under pressure that would crush a submarine, the deepest fish in the ocean is transparent, boneless, and thriving. It solved the abyss by becoming soft. Chernobyl black frogs. On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl reactor explosion made the surrounding area the most radioactive place on Earth. 36 years later, the frogs there have turned black. Hyla orientalis, the eastern tree frog, is normally bright green. Inside the exclusion zone, individuals are on average 43.6% darker than those outside, with some nearly pitch black, and the darkest ones live closest to the damaged reactor. 10 generations. That's all it took to cross a line evolution wasn't supposed to cross that fast. For context, if humans changed at this rate under environmental pressure, we'd see visible physiological differences in about 250 years. These frogs did it in 36. Humans spend billions on sunscreen. These frogs just evolved it in a decade. The frogs aren't mutated in the comic book sense. This is textbook natural selection. Frogs that happened to be darker before the disaster survived better because melanin absorbs and dissipates radiation energy, scavenges reactive oxygen species, and reduces DNA damage. Eumelanin production is metabolically cheap for this species, no fitness trade-off, so the trait spread fast through the population. No new mutations needed, just selection pressure on existing variation. Of all the possible responses to a nuclear meltdown, change color is simultaneously the most elegant and the most unbothered. The worst nuclear disaster in human history became, for these frogs, a 10-generation wardrobe change. At some point, you have to wonder whether science is discovering limits or just daring biology to break them. Deinococcus radiodurans. A single chest X-ray hits you with about 2/100ths of a gray. 5 grays kills a human. 200 grays kills a cockroach, which is supposedly the thing that survives everything. This bacterium keeps dividing at 5,000 grays. Science drew a line at 5,000 grays of radiation and said nothing should survive it. This bacterium didn't just cross it, it reassembled itself on the other side. Its name literally means strange berry that withstands radiation, and honestly, that undersells it. When hit with a lethal radiation dose, its genome shatters into hundreds of fragments. Complete destruction. And then, within a few hours, it pieces everything back together, accurately, using redundant copies of its own genome and repair enzymes so efficient they make human DNA repair look like duct tape. Scientists named it radiodurans, Latin for radiation enduring, which is like naming a fish water tolerant. Most people think radiation resistance means blocking radiation. Deinococcus does the opposite. It absorbs the full dose, lets the damage happen, then fixes it, like a mechanic who rebuilds the entire car while it's still moving. Here's the twist. It didn't evolve for radiation at all. The same repair system evolved to survive extreme droughts, which also shatter DNA. It became radiation-proof by accident. It can also survive the vacuum of space, which seems like showing off at that point. We sterilize medical equipment with radiation. This bacterium treats it like a spa day. Kawah Ijen Archaea. Battery acid has a pH of 1. Your stomach acid sits around 1.5. The volcanic crater lake at Kawah Ijen in eastern Java drops to 0.1, nearly 10 times more acidic than battery acid, and things are growing in it. pH is logarithmic. Each whole number is 10 times more acidic than the last. Lemon juice at pH 2 is 100 times less acidic than what these archaea call home. The lake's water can dissolve clothing, corrode metal, and strip paint. The archaea seem fine. Archaea are often grouped with primitive life, but they're actually as genetically distinct from bacteria as humans are. Their acid tolerance comes from sophisticated membrane chemistry, not simplicity. Their cells use ether-linked lipids instead of ester-linked ones, making them fundamentally resistant to acid hydrolysis. They didn't evolve a workaround for acid. Their basic cellular architecture was acid-compatible from the start. Scientists had to develop special sampling equipment because the lake kept destroying their normal gear. The organisms they were studying had no such problem. We need specially engineered containers just to collect a sample. The archaea have been swimming in it for millennia without protection. Every species on this list lives somewhere science once said was impossible. They didn't get the memo. Or they got it and didn't care. If you want more of the wildest biology on the planet, subscribing lets you catch the next one. Thanks for watching.